419 with Gretchen DeBacker, Matt Killam, and Kevin Mullen.
Welcome into the 419, powered by WGTE and presented by Witro Wealth Management. I'm Kevin Mullen.
Gretchen DeBacker.
Matt Killam.
It is Mayor Monday, my friends.
Another Mayor Monday.
I know. You talk about the term Sunday scaries, right? People are like, not looking forward to Monday.
Do you have Mayor Monday scaries?
No, I get so excited for today.
Yeah.
Because we've said this time and time again. I think we say it every week, but you won't find somebody who loves their village, their city, their community more than the person who is the glutton for punishment that is the mayor of that.
And if we do find them, we should make sure everyone knows they don't like where they live.
That's right.
And so they can be gone.
I can't imagine it is a thankless job.
Mm-hmm.
It is a 24/7 catch you at the grocery store and complain about my trash pickup kind of job. But they do it because they love the community. They want to make it better, and certainly that's the case today. We've got Mayor from Genoa, Brent Huston is going to be with us, and then also Thomas Bergman, who's the city administrator, village administrator, but interestingly enough, also the former mayor of Genoa.
I think I'll tell you guys, I get stopped pretty regularly to talk about the show, and almost every other person likes Mayor Monday's segment the most. This has got to be close to 80 of the show. I've lost some track of it, and this is like the dark horse when we putting the content together. Mayor Mondays, I thought, was certainly a good idea, but people do love it, and other mayors are certainly not critiquing, but are talking about. We had the mayor of Perrysburg on, who I had not met, and he was a longtime listener of the show. His words, and he said, So I talked to my fellow mayors about this. So we'll see.
I think he's warning them.
That's right. The torch will be carried over today. I'm sure it's in good hands.
That might be true. We had Oregon on. We had Hank Fox from the Oregon Rec. I've talked about my experience with my boys playing baseball with Oregon Rec. The detail that I left out is that now that they are in 10U, they actually, so while they play through the Oregon Rec, they actually play in the Genoa League. And so it's a house travel league. And I know Brent has got some history with that league as well, and so I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about kind of sports and youth development and all of those cool things that are happening.
Question: if you're going to leave right now and head to Genoa, what route would you take?
I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah.
I do know it's in Ottawa County.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just Googled it.
Thank you, Google.
Yeah, sure.
In my defense
direction?
to the mayor who's listening to us right now, I don't know where anything is. I GPS to get here every morning. So.
That's right. Well, we're in Genoa right now.
Yeah. But if you had to guess from our current location,
What direction?
north, south, east, or
left.
west?
Yeah, left it is.
Yep.
You're not wrong.
I would say
just give it to her.
No,
Who
I
cares?
can't. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. If I had
You
$1,
mean this particular line of questioning or the whole show?
if I had $1 for every time I heard that, I would never work again.
I want to just take a minute and talk about, obviously we've talked about the new app at WGTE.
Yeah.
If people have not downloaded it, they've got to check it out. It's really cool. A great way to catch our show, but also all of the great content that's coming out of WGTE. But also if people have ideas for the show, if they want to tell us how great we are.
Yeah, we'll take it.
They can do all of that. Shoot us an email, 419@WGTE.org. Just another great way to get in contact with us. Let's take a break. When we come back, we dive into Mayor Monday with the mayor of Genoa. We'll be right back.
Support for the 419 comes from Witro Wealth Management, where we understand that your financial path is personal. Advisory services are offered through Capital Investment Advisory Services, LLC. Securities offered through Capital Investment Group, Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. More information at WitroAdvisors.com.
The 419, powered by WGTE, is made possible in part by supporters like you. Thank you.
Introducing The Local Thread, a community news series uniting voices and storytellers from across the region. In partnership with La Prensa, the Toledo Free Press, the Sojourner's Truth, and Toledo Public Schools, The Local Thread brings you stories and conversations that connect our community. Hear it weeknights at 7 on FM 91 with early access on podcast platforms each morning. The Local Thread, only on WGTE.
Welcome back into the 419. It's Mayor Monday, and we're taking a tour of the village of Genoa with Mayor Brent Huston. Mayor, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. It's good to be here.
So if we could just start with educating Gretchen on, it's not Michigan, so you don't have to use the back of your hand, but where is Genoa?
I always tell people it's south and east of Toledo, about 15, 20 minutes, right down State Route 51, Woodville Road. If you take that right down there, you'll run right into Main Street in Genoa, and nice little drive out, a little scenic, and we got some good places that maybe we'll talk about. That come visit and come see us.
Gretchen, what is your favorite state route if you had to rank them?
Probably 25 is my favorite.
Tell me about why.
Because it's really Central Avenue, I think.
Nope.
Sure isn't.
It's
So,
not.
Mayor, what got you into this line of work? Why are you doing this to yourself?
You grew up in Genoa, correct?
I did grow up in
Born and
Genoa.
raised?
Born and raised.
All right, tell me about that.
Grew up on 11th Street in town. Rode my bike to the park every day. It was in the 80s, so it's like, Mom said, come home. We actually had a bell in our yard when they would ring the bell, and I would come home for dinner. I mean, that was actual.
Yep.
What'd your folks do? Were they transplants, or are you?
So my dad was born and raised in Genoa.
Okay.
He passed when I was very young, but they had the garbage business in town.
Okay.
They did like when I was young, and that today is now they've been purchased, but Stevens Disposal, who is now our garbage piece. It was originally.
You're kidding me.
Was my.
Yeah.
I mean, it was acquired again, but that was my.
Interesting.
My dad.
So Stevens started in some form in Genoa.
Well, they acquired part of what was in Genoa.
All right, I'll take it.
And now that we just changed our garbage contract to them.
Yeah.
By.
Full circle.
Kind of
A little
small
bit of
world.
nepotism there, if you ask me. But all right, so then how about Mom?
My mom grew up in Fremont, and she's a Linder. I don't know if you know anything about sprint car racing.
100%.
That's my mom's cousins, and they grew up. They had a big dairy farm out there that was her aunt and uncles.
Are you into car racing?
Me, no. So so my mom's dad passed away like 1 year and 1 day before I was born. So I never got to know him at all. And while we were, we do things with her family. We'd go to the races and stuff. So it was never,
Yeah. Plus those Fremont people.
Yeah.
You got to be careful.
Yeah, you got.
So attended Genoa High School.
Attended Genoa High School, graduated in 1998. Went to college. I kind of bounced around for a few years. The famous line is, I went to school for 9 years. You would think I was a doctor.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Sounds familiar.
But, got my degree in business administration.
Where'd you go?
I eventually graduated from Owens with a business degree from Owens, and then I went to Tiffin University and graduated from there.
You're a
Do you
dragon?
have siblings in your nuclear family?
I am the one and only.
Only child.
I do have two stepsisters that, they don't, I guess one lives in Bowling Green and the other lives in Columbus. But yeah, they weren't really a part of our lives.
Right.
Sure. Did you play any sports growing up? Well, you said that you were out playing in the park. What was your jam out there?
Baseball, basketball, and I was a golfer. And
that was not been my guess.
Well, so when I was young, I had a brain injury.
Okay.
And the doctor, I played football when I was little.
Sure.
But my neurologist basically said, you could play football, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah,
So I was
that's a lot of risk.
Kevin had the same prognosis, and he just kept playing, and this is what the result of that is.
Hey, we're on the same desk right here. We're just fine.
It's funny you say it, but it's actually true. When I was in college, I had multiple concussions in a row, and they were like, "Yeah, you're done with I'm not supposed to play basketball anymore."
These guys were just talking the other day when we met about how they still attempt, which is a
at
characteristic
what
of men your
point?
age, where they try to still play sports, and they are rolling ankles and breaking pinkies and jamming their
At
fingers.
what point did you realize that?
First of all, we didn't need. No one said pinkies.
Yeah, my
I
pinky
want
is
to be
fine.
clear.
I think I said
At
pinky.
what point did you realize that, like, when you play basketball, it is officially old man basketball?
I was probably after I got married, like 20, mid-20s,
Yeah.
it's like, and then when my friends started having kids, it's like, man, this is not
do
what
this.
I remember.
That's right.
Right, exactly.
I remember this being fun.
So,
Yeah.
Get a degree in business administration.
Yep.
Did you always think that you were going to get involved in politics?
So yeah, not a chance. I mean, so I always call this is my second job. This is what I always tell people. Like my day job is I'm a banking center manager for West Banco in Genoa. So if you come down Woodville Road, we're right on the corner, the
Sure.
big building there.
Yeah.
That's my day job. That's the job that pays the bills. Being a mayor is kind of a part-time job for us. And long story short is, they needed some help on council. They had some guys that were leaving. There was kind of I don't want to say a financial crisis, but they were having some issues with the finances for the village of Genoa. My godfather was on the council at the time, and he's like, hey, we really need somebody with a financial background. Would you be willing to, come on to council and, help with the finance department? So that's how I originally got on. Is I was just a member of council.
It couldn't have been just as easy as that, right?
Well-
I mean, talk to me a little bit about sitting down and making this commitment where you're around the kitchen table saying, is this something I want to sign on to?
Yeah, so I talked to my wife, and
Yeah.
she'll tell you that I probably just made the decision on my own. But
Sure.
with
She's
very
coming on next, so I'd be careful.
we did talk about it a little bit, and at that point it was just, hey, you're on council, you go to 2 meetings a month, no big deal. It's
Sure.
like we'll help out, and I did that so I was actually appointed, and then I had to run for re-election, 2 years later, I think, and I won re-election.
You seem like a quiet person. The campaigning, is that something that was just excruciating for you?
So not but like when I became mayor, yeah, that was a pain in my butt.
Yeah, sure.
It's something that
You do have great hair. That has to help, right?
apparently, but
Yeah.
and
Doesn't hurt.
working at a bank,
Yeah.
having kids in the community. I know we'll talk about it later, but being a coach in the community,
Yeah.
like I knew a ton of people,
Right.
but going door to door, knocking, saying, hey,
Totally. These are my priorities.
yeah, this is what we're looking at doing.
Sure.
I was like, I'm not. There's no hidden agenda. All we want to do is make the village a better place to live. Maybe try to reduce taxes a little bit. Make it easier on people, and people want to live in Genoa. It's a nice
Sure.
suburban community.
Yes, it is.
And house goes for sale. I mean, it's gone.
Yeah.
And,
What was after you got that appointment on council? What was the thing that made you think I'm going to run? I'm going to retain the seat. Why did you want to keep doing it?
because you can see progress.
Yeah.
The governmental financing is weird to begin with.
That's an understatement.
But yeah, you guys probably know a little
Yes,
bit.
I do. Yeah, I'll be leaving here and going to it.
Yeah.
But technically we were negative in our general fund.
Gretchen, and that's not good.
No, it's
that's
not.
And
Yeah.
that was 2016, I think, is when I first went on. Now, 10 years later, I mean, we are, 10 times, where we were before. Not in the rears.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't know how
positive.
math works for you, but
Yeah.
But just doing different things. Cutting where we could cut a little bit. Everybody tightening their belt. And finding new sources of revenue.
Talk to me about that. I mean,
when you say find new source of revenue, what does that look like?
Economic development is a phrase that everyone talks about in almost any capacity, but building it.
Yes. So we're not quite to that portion yet. But like the big thing that we did is, the Village of Genoa has an income tax. We were doing that on our own. We actually partnered with RITA, which a lot of smaller communities do around here. And, they are able to locate people who should have been paying taxes in Genoa and may not have been over the years. And, it was over $100,000
Yeah, it's real money.
that they found that, we were not collecting.
Missing out on, right?
And, that was huge. And, we manipulating some fun, like when we get the income tax, X number of dollars was going to the general fund, X number of dollars was going to improvements and stuff. We kind of manipulated those numbers a little bit, so more was going towards the general fund. But
strategically move them around makes a lot of sense to me. I do have to ask a question. I mean, you work 5 to 6 days a week at a bank and a community bank.
Yeah.
So how difficult is it to manage what hat you're wearing at said location? Because people have to come in and check their account and say, well, I'm here. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the potholes or my kid is wreck experiences.
Yes.
How do you politely, because you certainly are a charming guy, how do you vacillate back and forth, or what is the boundary that you articulate?
Yeah,
it must be hard.
It is hard because you
care.
Yeah, exactly. I would say if it's a quick response, I'll say, hey, your balance in your checking account is this, and hey, we're going to work on getting those
If you don't
potholes
shut
fixed.
your mouth, it's going to be a lot less.
But if it's a more in-depth thing, I was like, hey, we really need to talk about this after hours.
Right.
I was like, give me your phone number, or I'll give my cell number, and
Sure.
okay, we need to talk after hours. I always invite people to come to a meeting because that's where the real action happens is at a council meeting. I can relay a message, from a customer or a resident, but it's different coming from the source.
Totally.
And unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know. Not many people come to a council meeting unless they're upset
mad.
about something.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about, you referred to it as a village a number of times.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the difference between a village and a city and its incorporation, and also just the overview of the city. You have a city manager. It's not a strong mayor form of government. How many council members, that kind of stuff?
Yep. So, right now, according to the last sentence, we're about 2,300 residents in the village of Genoa. And, I think the designation goes by population. So, and I'm not 100% sure what the actual number is, but maybe over 5,000 is considered a town, and then a city. And, I don't know what those numbers are, but that's how we do it. We do have 6 council members.
Who do you hate the most? I'm just kidding. Just a joke.
There's one in particular.
He almost said. He
There
almost
always
said.
is. Yeah.
No, actually, I think that's probably the best thing about why we're making some progress in Genoa is, we got, people from all different walks of life, but, we all
Yes, sir.
are I wouldn't say agreeable, but we all get along. We do have different, opinions on different things, but we all get along, respect each other. And, the ultimate goal is we want to move the village forward.
Yeah.
What was the other?
The organizational structure. How many employees? How's it? What's the org chart look like?
So we're in charge of police department. We have chief, 3 full-time police officers, and then maybe 3 or 4 part-timers. We have a public works department. That is probably one of the biggest things about a village of our size or any town of our size is we're in charge of our water, electric, and sewer. And I think there's probably 7 or 8 guys in that department. So that's, and then we have billing clerk, secretary, fiscal officer, and our village administrator.
Okay.
And the village administrator basically handles day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
And, I say basically, he does quite a bit.
I can feel him glaring at us right now.
And
say something
we're
nice.
very fortunate to have the staff that we do between the village administrator, our fiscal officer, and our billing clerk there, because our billing clerk's been there like 20 years, and she knows everybody in town. Our fiscal officer has many years of experience in the public sector, and she's been a whiz dealing with everything on that. And
How do you feel like you work with who I'm sure are your friends at Ottawa County and other mayors in the region? What kind of things do you do to engage in those relationships?
Commiserate with one another.
we always different local mayors. We always see different functions around town. The big partners that we're working with now is the Ottawa County Improvement Corporation, OCIC. We do have, or we are trying to bring in some new business to the village of Genoa, for tax revenue and whatnot. But they've been a good partner of ours. The Ottawa County Parks District has been very huge for us. We've done some major renovations at the park in Genoa, and over the last 5 years, and it's been huge. Ottawa County commissioners are working with us. There's a lot of different entities around in Ottawa County that.
You have a long tradition of successful high school football.
Yes.
Then there was no shortage of that this year. Is a Friday night a football night? Do you go to the games?
Oh yeah. So
yeah. All right.
My son plays. My daughter's a cheerleader.
Okay. What position does your son play?
He was the nose tackle this past year. And,
all right.
They're twins, a boy and girl twins, and they're juniors this year, so they have one more year. But yeah, we
close to empty nester.
Yeah. Well.
That's a mixed bag.
Depending on who you ask. We're trying to get them, hey, what are you going to do for college?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you want to do for a living? I don't know.
And you're like packing their stuff up for them?
And my wife's like, you guys can stay
Countdown
forever.
calendar.
It's like, no, I was like, no, they really can't. They need to figure
sure.
something out.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're great kids. And
yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, so the school had a very, very successful year so far between football and basketball team, and hopefully wrestling team, cross country. They all won the league.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a great couple of years here that very
and a great tradition.
We're talking with Brent Huston, the mayor of the Village of Genoa. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the future of Genoa, what his plans are, what he ran on, and maybe we'll get a little grade card, see how he's doing so far. We'll take a break. We'll be right back on the 419.
To me, community means connecting to others.
I'm Donnie Miller, and welcome to The Point.
We're a community committed to education. Discover new ideas, dive into exciting subjects, and engage with the world around you.
I would send them personally a t-shirt. Crime doesn't pay in the Old West End, pass it on. That's how we cleaned up the neighborhood.
Vision loss for people is not the end. It's a story, it's the next chapter.
WGTE Public Media invites you to Get Out and Play Day.
Monday through Friday, it's the 419 powered by WGTE. With Matt Killam, Gretchen DeBacker, I'm Kevin Mullen. What can people expect on the show?
It's going to be an hour, a reminder of why this is a great place to live, work, and play.
WGTE, where you come to watch, listen, and learn.
Welcome back into the 419. It's Mayor Monday, and we're talking with Brent Huston, the mayor of the Village of Genoa. If you're out traveling the country and you're telling somebody, it comes up that you're the mayor of Genoa, how do you describe Genoa to somebody that's not from Northwest Ohio?
I would just say it's a very peaceful, quiet, suburban community. It's a great place to raise a family, and those are the things that come to mind first, I guess.
Sure. We talked about economic development. I mean, what does industry look like in Genoa? Do you guys have big businesses, industrial?
Not a lot. I mean, we do have a couple different things. Ballman Auto Group has a Ford and a Chevy store in our town. We do have Riverside Machine, which is a tool and die machining shop in town. But probably the most recognizable place that we have is J&P, which is ceramic or plates and stuff.
Absolutely.
Claim to fame is they made an angel that was the topper at the White House during the Clinton administration.
How about that?
So I was, people come from all over to go to this particular shop. Very small, you wouldn't even know it's there if you didn't know it was there. But a couple other things that we have in town is we have the grotto at Our Lady of Lourdes Church, which is very recognizable. And we also are claim to fame is we have the Privy, which is one of the oldest indoor bathrooms in the country, I believe.
Why is it called the Privy?
You said bathroom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on and you may have to talk to Mr. Bergman about this a little bit more, but it's It's on
Actually, that segment was going to be exclusively about bathrooms.
But it's on the National Registry of Historic Places, and it was one of the first indoor bathrooms.
Have you used it?
Yeah.
No, I've never been in there, and it's in a building that's never. It's a building that's, I don't even know how we would get there because it's kind of on private property. But
So is it in someone's private home, or is it in like a commercial building?
it was the former elementary school in town.
Okay.
And somebody has bought that and renovated it, and they actually live there. So I'm not exactly. It's on that property.
Well, I need to go there and see it.
Well, we can ask Thomas about his house when he comes on.
But it's claim to fame. What are you famous for? That's the kind of stuff.
That's the thing.
One more time, it is the oldest public bathroom in the United States.
No, the oldest indoor.
The oldest indoor.
But you might have to talk to the expert on that.
Yeah.
That's right. You got it.
You mentioned coaching.
Yes.
I said in the intro that I've got some experience with the Genoa Rec League.
Yeah.
You guys have got an incredible thing going on there, and there's a lot of communities across Northwest Ohio that all participate in that league. I understand you've had some leadership roles with that group as well.
Yeah. So I started there when I was 19 years old as a coach. My friend of mine, his brother needed a coach his team, and I stuck with it the whole time until my kids got there, and I coached my kids all the way through, and now they have moved on. I'm actually the treasurer of the league. I've been the treasurer for probably 10 or 15 years, and kind of run buying the uniforms and the equipment and then concession stand stuff. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and a lot of communities around, they don't. They don't have a home for their kids to play ball.
Is this all sports?
This is just baseball right now.
Okay.
My goal at some point, maybe, to make it more, but right now it's just baseball. And so we're kind of incorporating softball as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these communities, they don't have a place to go. And like all these leagues were folding, and, like, hey, would you consider coming here? And you were like, well,
Mr. Mayor, I know that you mentioned this a little bit, but you were the treasurer of this. You were on council. Where does this? You could just go to the games, right, or drop your kids off, or have been appointed and let that go by. Where does the pull to give back? Does it come? Is that from your mom? Is that something you think you have on the molecular level? You could just attend and be a good neighbor. Why take the next? Why take the step up here?
It's probably from my mom and my stepdad. My mom was a school teacher. My stepdad worked at Davis Bessie, but I know that we'd go to church every Sunday. They would volunteer doing different things at church. For me, the opportunities came in other aspects. And
to the 9 colleges you went to.
Yeah, you met a lot of people doing
That's right. We're all across the United States.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that it started there, and it's when you have a passion for something. Yeah. I mentioned earlier my dad passed away when I was young, and like one of the things that I always remember from him is like my mom had like newspaper clippings of him playing baseball when he was little, and
was he a big star?
Back in the day, they had the little league scores posted in the newspaper, it's like Huston's homer wins game, and that's
cool.
Thing I always remember, and it's like, I always want to be a part of that.
Sure.
Like when I started playing baseball, the Diamond One in Genoa, the Thomas Field, had my last name carved in. It was a wooden fence, and it was carved into the fence. And now they replaced it shortly after I started. But I do remember. That's one of the things I remember as a 5-6-year-old kid.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, I'm going to be out there in like 2 weeks, so I'll carve it back into the fence.
Well, it's a metal fence now, so
spray paint.
I'll work a little harder.
If you, what wakes up the mayor of the village of Genoa in the middle of the night? What's the thing that worries you?
Just how we're going to proceed into the future. It's we just talking on the way here. Taxes have been raised. Everybody's worried about, water rates, electric rates. Sure. What can we do in order to offset that for customers, or our residents? In my day job, I talked to a guy the other day that he's having issues making his house payment because his taxes went up so much. And he came to me, what can I do to get assistance? And, we gave him some ideas of where he could go and what organizations he can talk to. But, that's a real thing. Like, hey, I can make my house payment, but, paying for the other stuff is different. and the debates out there, do you eliminate property tax? Had this conversation with somebody else, like if you eliminate property tax, how else are we going to get that money to fund those different things that we need to do? So it's a double-edged sword. Like, you're darned if you do, darned if you don't. It's like, how are we going to do this? And you see it on some of our neighboring communities. Look over Lake Township. First Solar is very big for them. It's what kind of industry could we bring to Genoa that wouldn't be detrimental to the community,
the culture,
and
would increase the tax
and benefit them, right?
Do you guys have the land?
We do have some land that has been available. A couple years ago, I think maybe 2 years ago, I was on Toledo 11 News, and they just we had 223 acres that a gentleman put into the village, and it was made marketable. And so there's been some opportunities.
It's not that lunatic that owns the bathroom, is it?
No.
Thank God. That's a real maverick. Or she, I guess I should.
Yeah.
Although that does not sound like something a woman would do. It sounds like something an idiot man would do. We cut you off on the break, but it is one of my favorite parts of Mayor Mondays. Walk me through the perfect day in Genoa, where you get up, you do this, you go where do you eat, walk me through. You mentioned Main Street. I've been to Genoa many times. But if I've never been there before and I was coming in for a day, walk us through sun up to sundown.
So I think that you'd probably come in and go to Art Cafe for breakfast.
Yeah, all right.
They little breakfast spot in town, and that's what they're known for. They're open, I think longer than that, but
the breakfast spot.
That's the breakfast place to be.
Yeah.
I think then you go over to the park. We have brand new pickleball courts.
Sure.
Brand new basketball
courts. Have you played
pickleball? Just batting it back and forth.
Yeah.
Nothing. I haven't really got into it yet.
It is more fun than I was anticipating.
Okay. I really want to do it because it's a good way to exercise, and we have these. They're brand new courts.
People are crazy about this.
I know. It's something. And then we have for your biking and walking enthusiasts, we're the head of the North Coast Inland Trail right now. Like it stops right at our park. We got plans to weave it through town and head it towards Millbury, but right now, if you start or finish, you're finishing in or starting in Genoa.
Yep.
So we see a lot of bikers. Like I don't know if they're not professional, but they're avid bikers that come in. Plus, you got it just for the kids and everybody in town. It's a great thing to have.
Yes, it is.
You have the quarry here in town. You get a lot of swimming during the day and fishing.
Yeah.
Lots of different things to do. Couple places to go at night. We have Ray's Cafe, which downtown, and we recently had Casino de Carlos opened a restaurant in Genoa, and that's been a big hit. A lot of people.
What do you get at Ray's?
Usually for me, I get the loaded balls.
Okay.
Just pile all that crap on there.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And it's
it sounds perfect.
That's right.
If money and timeline and budget and politics were no issue,
sure.
What's the dream? What's the dream project? What's the thing that you would have dropped in Genoa?
Oh man, like what would we have dropped in? Like I don't know. We joked that if we could get some type of business revenue from whoever, maybe we would pave the streets in gold.
Yeah. I like it.
That's
Golden Genoa.
That's right. But that's a far off dream, I guess. The main thing is make sure we have working infrastructure. We've experienced a lot of water leaks this past few years. Come to find out that our water system was put in the 20s or 30s.
That's right.
So a lot of that needs updated.
Sure.
We recently redid some of our sewer pump stations because we provide sewer to kind of the outlying areas, and we have 3 or 4 pump stations, and when they all go bad at the same time.
Of course they do.
But we were just replaced all those. So it's things like that is, making sure that we have the infrastructure to take Genoa into the 21st century.
For the last decade plus, anytime a shovel broke ground in Oregon, the community says it's an Olive Garden, right? and it isn't. It never has been. Is there anything like that in Genoa that anytime there's any project, the rumor mill runs wild going, we're finally getting...
Yeah, it's so, we had a Rite Aid in town. And Rite Aid is closed, and it's catty corner from my office. And, anytime there's a vehicle in that parking lot, they're like, oh, I heard it's going to be this or it's going to be that. Everybody wants a restaurant.
Yeah.
We got the restaurant, and Casino de Carlos, they, came in but, everybody wants something different or something better. We're trying to, work with a couple different companies to, maybe purchase that property or maybe build something different. But it's tough. It's tough. But and then you said, is working at the bank, the corner there at 51 and Main Street, there was somebody put on the Talk of Genoa, which is the rumor mill.
What a helpful mechanism.
That they're gonna put a roundabout there.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
people love them.
That's not happening. No. But people are still they come and ask me about that. And I'm like, no.
It's a rumor. Right.
Yeah. All right. It's now time for Gretchen's Wacky Quiz. She loves this name. I'm going to ask 4 rapid fire questions. Gretchen's going to ask you to describe Genoa in exactly 1 word. And then you and Matt are going to list out the 9 best things in or about Genoa.
Okay.
So, all right, here we go. If you could be any age, what age would you be?
I would be 18 again.
Yeah.
What historical event from the past do you think is a conspiracy?
Oh, great one.
Oh, my.
It's got to be about that toilet.
It's about the toilet.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's a...
You don't want to admit it, do you?
No, I don't
Write it
really
down.
know. What could it be?
The moon landing.
Yeah, I love it.
Apparently, there's pictures that says they saw the stuff that they left there.
We'll skip that one.
We'll pass
Yeah,
that.
that's a
karaoke. You got a karaoke in front of a group. What song are you singing?
I think that it would be like Matchbox 20 or Third Eye Blind or something, some rock.
From your era.
Yes.
I get it.
Like it.
This says amongst your friends, but I'm going to put this to work, right? Amongst the village employees.
Yes.
Who's the most likely to become a stand-up comedian?
It's probably Mike Thomas. That's what he's very dry and very, but he always comes up with some one-liners and it says some things that may be inappropriate sometimes.
Sure.
It gets everybody.
He's had a few warnings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, what is the 1 word you would use to describe your beloved Genoa?
I would say, tranquil.
Love it. Great word.
Okay.
All right, man.
I like it.
We're going to do 9 words that describe, or the 9 favorite things about Genoa or the area.
Okay.
Let's do it. Fire away.
So number 1 would be the park.
Parks, love it.
And this is rapid fire, right? Sorry.
That's right. You're doing great.
But we'll go Ray's Cafe.
Ray's Cafe. You better say the new one.
Casino de Carlos.
There you go. All right.
They're both great places to be. I would say Genoa High School.
Genoa, absolutely.
It's a great place.
What's the mascot?
Comets.
Yeah, Comets. We're giving you another one for that.
All
Keep
right.
going.
Comets.
Let's see. We'll go Champew Packer Creek Pottery.
I'm going to give you 2 for that. Now, give you some brownie points on the homestead. What's your wife's name?
Brady.
And your 2 kids?
Seth and Sadie.
Done.
That's the list.
So.
Those are the 9 best things in Genoa.
You got it, buddy.
I love it. Mayor, thank you so much.
No problem.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will have Thomas Bergman, who is not only the village administrator, but also a former mayor. And so we'll talk about what his role is and get a little more look into the village of Genoa here on a Mayor Monday on the 419. We'll be right back.
Support for the 419 comes from Witro Wealth Management, where we understand that your financial path is personal. Advisory services are offered through Capital Investment Advisory Services, LLC. Securities offered through Capital Investment Group, Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. More information at WitroAdvisors.com.
Destination Toledo,
Whether you're a local or a visitor, Destination Toledo invites you to explore the region and be a tourist in Toledo. Find events, dining, and things to do at visittoledo.org.
WorkSpring. HR issues and employee well-being go hand in hand. WorkSpring supports employers through compliance, training, and wellness because healthy workplaces don't happen by accidents. Learn more at workspring.org.
Toledo Refining Company, a subsidiary of PDF Energy. Toledo Refining Company is a supplier of fuels that keep our region moving. Located in Oregon, Ohio, the refinery processes crude oil into gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and other petroleum products.
And TARTA, celebrating its 55th year of connecting Northwest Ohioans to their community. More information at tarta.com.
Welcome back into the 419. It's Mayor Monday and a rare double dose of Mayor Monday, as we're joined now by the village administrator of Genoa, but also former mayor. Do you require Mayor Huston to call you Mayor Bergman in the office?
No, I prefer not to. Yeah.
And just all the residents. You make them
just around your house.
Some still do. Mr. Mayor, and I go, it's not. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. What happened there? You were the mayor just prior to Mayor Huston.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I was elected in 2019. I was 29 years old, and I took office January of 2020. And nothing went wrong.
Nothing went wrong.
Yeah, nothing went wrong in the year 2020.
No.
Yeah.
Totally an unremarkable time.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, my administrator at the time was my predecessor. He had to go out for a surgery, and he just said, just make sure they vote yes. I'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Nothing,
Just make sure they vote yes.
Yeah. Right. And then by the time that he came back, the world had all changed.
Yeah.
So I kind of, trial by fire there. So I learned a whole bunch as mayor, and that gentleman, the entire time, obviously he knew when he was going to retire, and he said, by the way, you have to take my job. I went to school for city planning at Ohio State.
Oh, okay.
So I've been saying no for 3 years, and we interviewed some candidates, and honestly, the best candidate was my college roommate, who was a project manager at an engineering firm here in Toledo. And just kind of said, you'll never get another opportunity to take this job. You could always, if it didn't work out, you could go do something else. But okay, let's do it. And so I called up my former college roommate and said, hey, sorry.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, right.
And also, I have your mini fridge. Come get it.
Right. Yeah,
and so this was a situation because your predecessor was stepping down that you got appointed to the.
Yeah, he was retiring.
Okay.
And so when I finally said, okay, I'll try it. I mean, he was just harping me relentlessly for 3 years there, and so he went and talked to council and said, hey, would you guys be up for this? And they said yes, and so I resigned and was appointed, and the rest is history.
And so did the global pandemic play into the fact that you didn't want to actually run for another term?
Right. No, that was tough because people didn't really know me so much. I did not go to Genoa schools. I lived in Genoa my whole life, but I went to like Moy Valley and then St. Francis and Cardinal Stritch. And so like I knew people, but not all that well.
Yeah.
So what was that? 10 weeks into your mayor term, the economy shuts down, and you can't. We didn't have the summer festival like homecoming. I was like, my opportunity to go meet people as the mayor was kind of hamstrung.
Right.
Yeah.
So that everything was on Facebook.
Yeah.
Which was we don't have enough time to talk about that.
Are you suggesting a shutdown is not the best way to meet your constituents?
Yeah, correct. Believe it or not. Yeah.
That's
we had to shut down the park.
I'm gonna write that down.
I don't know how many times I said, you need to talk to Governor DeWine about this. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. We're just waiting for those press conferences, right?
We're talking with Thomas Bergman, the village administrator in Genoa. What exactly is the role of the village administrator?
That's interesting. I used to describe.
We'll be the judge of it.
Yeah, because it's confusing. The best way I describe to people is, imagine going from mayor to administrator. It's like going from like president of the school board to superintendent. Like I think that's something people are more familiar with. Of like, yes, the school board is in charge and they're the bosses, but the superintendent is running the day-to-day and giving strategy advice, and it's their full-time gig. So that's how I describe it to people. I used to describe the mayor. You had mentioned with Brent, it's called a weak mayor system, which is kind of an insulting term, but that's what it is.
I didn't say that. Gretchen said that.
Right. Yeah. You break ties, and you're the ceremonial figurehead. And I used to describe it as being the vice president and the pope at the same time, which, given recent news stories, is kind of funny.
Right. It is.
And it's going great.
Right. But no, I the way I look at it is the projects have to get done. You have to be in compliance with your water, your sewer, et cetera. We can either raise your taxes or raise rates, or we can be very, very aggressive at going after grants and whatnot to double or triple your spending power.
Absolutely, right.
So that's something I take a lot of pride in.
Yeah.
I think we got to be pushing 10 million in grants. We probably brought in.
That's amazing.
That's great.
And it's, again, the project has to get done.
Yeah.
That's right. State and federal? Pardon me.
Go ahead.
State and federal grants?
I'll
Sure.
take anybody's money.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
County, you name it.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like,
Did
hey,
you run on that platform?
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's right.
As a Ohio State educated city planner, what drives you nuts about the layout of the city of Genoa?
Oh,
if you could fix it.
No, I would take the opposite
Okay.
view. I would, when I went door to door, I'd advocate, hey, Genoa's a great place to raise a family because of our layout. It's still it's a 19th century grid system, which is walkable and bikeable, and that has come back in a big way in the last 20 years. So I would always tell people, the best thing.
Thanks to your aggressive pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
People really got outside
People
thanks
were
to your
walking
leadership.
like you wouldn't believe.
That's right. We wouldn't even have the pandemic without your leadership.
And that
I know you say that all the time.
I know.
All they did was increase sidewalk complaints.
That's right.
Well, the
That's
code
right.
says it's your responsibility.
That is such a funny thing. I work for the park system during my day job, and that is a lot of complaints all of a sudden about the playgrounds. And I was like, excellent.
Yeah.
We'll rush right out there.
Our playground was in dire shape, and we built a new one, and because of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly, taking a year off for COVID, I did a lot of soul searching, and we were able to fix our finances and kind of reset things. So there was some silver lining to it.
We felt the same way. It did highlight also some components from the metro parks that, or at least a delta or a gap of services, programming that we were not providing. Social things for seniors to do, and mental and mindful programming as well. I mean, nature is an equalizer, and certainly we all know has some health components to it. But that certainly highlighted the fact that we should do more of it. But let me ask you, as a Genoa resident, but went away to school, what set you on this course? I mean, you could have moved, I guess, from Ohio State to anywhere.
For sure.
Back to your hometown.
You talk about motivation, intrinsic motivations. You need a therapist to probably figure that out. But
that's not this show, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
My name's Thomas. I'm actually named after my grandmother, who went by Tommy. Her maiden name was Thompson. Her first name was Agnes. If your name was Agnes, you'd probably switch it up too.
My real name is Agnes.
She went by Tommy, and she was a great community organizer for decades and decades, and never held elected office. They didn't have an administrator back then, but brought in millions of dollars of grants. And I grew up hearing those stories. My parents were both very involved civically, whether it was just being on the tree commission, always willing.
What did they do?
My father owned a paving business in town. He passed away when I was 10. My mother was she was a teacher at the school, at Genoa schools. But again, if there was an opportunity to volunteer, she'd have been there 100%. I just grew up in that. So when I went to Ohio State, and I can remember vividly the professor saying, hey, if you like being at the intersection of architecture and public policy and dealing with the public and the insanity of zoning codes, this is the place for you. And I was immediately like,
now this was an AA meeting?
Right, exactly.
Where was this conversation held?
Exactly. So I came back after college, and I was working for said paving company, operating a shovel, and it's not as much fun as it sounds. I ended up running for mayor and kind of went from there. But I think what I like about Genoa and living in a small town is you either enjoy knowing your neighbors or you don't. I mean,
and your neighbors knowing you.
Correct. Yeah. And I would tell people when I was going door to door, it's like I don't know who's who. I don't know who kissed whom on the playground 30 years ago and all that. But I
There's
just
upside to that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. It's like I'm just
Absolutely.
here to improve the town. But I'm going to quote Dave Chappelle here. We're expecting that. He lives in Yellow Springs, and David Letterman had come to visit him and said, "You could live anywhere in the world, why do you live here?" He had a great point about when you live in a small town, everyone's a celebrity.
Yeah.
So I don't stick out.
Sure.
And there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, the same guy's been cutting my hair since I was 12.
And what caused that guy's blindness?
I mean, you're in such an interesting role as former mayor, village administrator, right? Normally, when you sell your first home, you move out. At least for me, is that when I drive by it, I get annoyed at what the new owners have done with it.
Mine was due to divorce, Kevin. Thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome. But I'm not still living in that house, right?
Yeah, but I am.
That's right. You are. I mean, what has been some of the challenges, and how do both you and Mayor Huston sort of navigate the reality of
co-parenting?
Because he's a monster, obviously.
Brent is. I call cool hand Brent. 'Cause nothing phases Brent.
Right.
It's because I'm a worrier by nature.
Yeah.
So he's the optimist, I'm the pessimist, and so I'll attack a problem of, oh my gosh, we got to do something about this.
God, I wish we would have had him on second.
right.
That would have been a lot better. He was so charming, and now we've got you.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure.
Gloom and doom.
Right, exactly. It's more like, how are we going to pay for that?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
but it takes a team to do that. There are any number of examples of small towns where mayors and council or mayor and administrator aren't on the same page or working together.
And how helpful to their constituents.
I would hear stories before our time of this person would vote against this person's idea, regardless of if it made sense or not, just because
that just sticks it to the.
It goes back to those playground stories.
That's
of
right.
What happened? I don't care.
That's right.
We're here to build a new playground, or $10 million of water pipes would be cool, or do this and that to the sewer, and so to be on the same page has been refreshing, because then you can speak openly and hey, here's an idea, and so that's been.
You can trust him; he's coming for you. I mean that positively.
Right, exactly.
That's like an old improv thing: is you trust your partner. You know they're going to come for you if you need them.
100%. So we, Brent kind of underscored there. We were negative 150 grand in the hole. That was 10 years ago. So we've come a long way, and again, it's not only when you fix your operation, it gives you seed money to go after these grants, and then it's really just exponential.
That's right. Speaking of growth. I let the mayor down, and I hate to put you on the spot, but you need to bail me out here.
Sure.
There is a big celebration in Genoa that even I've heard about. It is the homecoming celebration.
May 30th.
It is May 30th. I know that there's a 250th celebration that has caused us to be ramped up. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so that's the Genoa Homecoming Festival. I always make sure to say festival, because people think you're talking about
Please
high
don't correct
school
me.
dance.
It's my show.
Yeah, no, right.
So.
People say, what are you doing for homecoming this year? They look at you sideways.
Yeah.
It's the homecoming festival, right? So,
Kevin still goes to homecoming every year.
Exactly.
I do.
Yeah.
So I think Gibsonburg also there's called the Homecoming Festival, and I believe the
we
name.
don't talk about Gibsonburg.
No, not in this town.
Yeah.
I believe it comes from veterans coming back from World War II. So they've been doing this for 70 or 80 years. And growing up, I just cared about like the elephant ears and all the carnival food.
Sure.
So a wonderful time to see the neighbors in the beer tent and really let the truth out.
That's right.
And we always have a big fireworks show. So we kind of, what are we going to do for the 250th? And it's America. Let's set up some fireworks. So the homecoming committee, I think, is going to increase the show by 50%. So it'll be like 30 grand worth of fireworks.
That's a lot.
It's going to be a big deal. It's always a big show. And last year was a record, but we said let's put it on steroids, and it's America. Come on. So we're really, really looking forward to that. I think sometime in May we're really going to start marketing that. It'll be, I don't know what the Perrysburgs or Toledo spend on there, but this will be the biggest one in
That's awesome.
in
That's
our
real
neck
money.
of the woods.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Where does it take place?
Oh, in the park.
Okay.
Yeah. You can't miss it. Yeah, we brought a new ride vendor. When I say we, it's the homecoming committee, right? But they brought on a new ride vendor that's been terrific. Numbers have been setting records, so it's gonna be great. We do a parade on Friday that brings in, I think, 5,000 or 10,000 people, really shoulder to shoulder there on Main Street, and it's that cool. It's Americana.
Yeah, right. Let me tell you, we promised you we wouldn't put you on the spot, but we're going to. Elephant ear or funnel cake?
Oh, elephant ear all day.
Good Lord, get this guy off.
It's clearly a funnel cake situation.
What is the difference?
Elephant
taste.
has too crispy.
I didn't know,
Good
so I just said
taste.
elephant ear.
I mean, but like legitimately, what is the difference, Matt? Somebody explain this to me.
Look, if you're even asking, it's not worth my time.
I mean, I know where Genoa is on a map, but I do not know the difference.
So did I.
Okay, so this is like the Venn diagram of our
elephant ear.
show.
I'm done with this.
There's all these I'm changing the subject. There's all these places, organizations where mayors can go to meet other mayors or network or find out what they're doing. Is there something similar for people that are administrators of cities? Do you have a group of colleagues that you can go to?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to, had even been the mayor, you had those contacts.
Sure.
It's like our peer towns would be Oak Harbor, Elmore. Certainly we're the closest with them, Woodville, because we're all, not only small towns, we're all electric providers, which are our biggest utility. But take Oak Harbor, for example. On the football field, it might be blood sport. But the moment that game's over, like
what are the rates going to be?
No, it's like they are our best friends.
Yeah.
So they are a phone call away. And I always tell people that we're rivals on the football field,
Yeah.
But we walk the same walk, and we're trying to figure this out together.
100%. And you know, so like for example, there, Mayor Quentin Babcock is a good friend of mine. We were Eagle Scouts from the same Boy Scout troop. And so when you have those connections, hey, how are you approaching this grant? Or are you going to be applying?
That's
you know,
right. Yeah, tell me exactly what
right,
it is.
right,
Sure.
What was your Eagle Scout service project?
Oh, there's a Martin Community Hall.
Fixing the old bathroom.
It was, you know, we'll get to that, yeah. So I painted the inside and did the inside. My brother did the outside.
That's cool.
My paint lasted longer.
Yeah, I was going to ask who the better scout was, but now we know.
Yeah, it was him. No, I finished mine 4 days before I was 18.
Yeah.
So if I failed the interview, there were no do-overs.
No.
Yeah, it was.
My dad and nephews are both Eagle Scouts. They're
Wonderful.
very proud of. Okay, let's discuss this toilet. You've seen it. You've been.
I've been there. Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. I think there might be some misnomers. So it's
there's been a lot of talk.
Yeah.
Set the record straight.
Yeah, I was gritting my teeth when Brent was saying. Okay,
This is typical mayor
first of all,
behavior.
the village owns the parcel.
Okay.
But it's just the area around it is the former camper school.
Okay.
So in the 70s, when you had this wave of, hey, we're going to save historic buildings instead of knocking them down, as a response to knocking them all down in the 50s, they needed to practice before they saved the Genoa Town Hall. So they found this bathroom, this privy of the old elementary school, and for whatever reason, they got it on the National Register of Historic Places. Not because there's anything historic about it, but because the fact that it got the stamp. But there's only 2 in the whole country that are on the National Register of Historic Places that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
There's one in Colorado on some ski resort, which
but
isn't
that
as cool.
that
No
was
way.
crap.
Yeah. No. There you go.
Yeah.
So we just, the claim to fame is we own it, you know, at least the second most historically significant
Can you
bathroom.
visit it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's there on Main and 163.
Have a big lunch at Ray's and then or breakfast at Ray's and head on over.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for being here. Thank you.
All right, when we come back, we'll wrap up this Mayor Monday edition of the 419.
You laughed with us. You learned with us.
Hi, neighbor.
We made sure your childhood was special. Memories that could only be provided by PBS. For generations, we've given you programs that made a difference. Programs that entertained, informed, and inspired. And today is no different. This is WGTE Public Media in Toledo. It's where you belong.
Introducing The Local Thread, a community news series uniting voices and storytellers from across the region. In partnership with La Prensa, the Toledo Free Press, the Sojourner's Truth, Toledo Public Schools, and Rethinking Jails and Justice. The Local Thread brings you stories and conversations that connect our community. Hear it weeknights at 7 on FM 91 with early access on podcast platforms each morning. The Local Thread, only on WGTE.
Welcome back into the 419. Mayor Monday, a double dose of mayors here for the first time. This is the most mayors we've ever packed into a show.
This is the most mayors that have ever been in the studio in the history of WGTE.
That it probably isn't true.
This studio.
This very studio.
Desk.
This desk. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What is a privy?
A privy is a small detached outdoor building used as a toilet. Are we allowed to say toilet on PBS?
We just did.
Yeah.
But
Good night, Irene.
it's usually over a pit in the ground.
All right, there we go.
So we're going to make the drive to
And they got
Genoa.
the oldest one in Genoa.
Yep, historical marker.
I just regret that might be the only thing I take from this.
Those guys are
very
great.
very fine gentlemen.
If you missed any part of the interview, of the conversation with our mayors, you can check it out. 7 a.m. on YouTube, 3 p.m. on FM 91, 6 p.m. on WGTE Connects, channel 30.4, or online, 24/7, WGTE.org/the419. This is the 419, powered by WGTE, presented by Wheatro Wealth Management.
The 419, powered by WGTE, is made possible in part by supporters like you. Thank you.